Good morning, everyone. So, this is my chosen topic. It's all about historical antecedents of science and technology. So, in the given ebook, this is on the section 2, and this presentation is our final requirement in this subject. So, let's proceed. Hi, I'm Princess Olorete, a second year pharmacy student. So in this presentation, we are going to tackle about the historical antecedents of science and technology. So let's proceed. One of the key interests of science and technology and society as an academic field is the history of science and technology. As a strand of STS, the history of science and technology focuses on how science and technology have changed across time. Also, it explores the impacts of scientific and technological innovations on the prevailing social, cultural, political, and economic context throughout history. Conversely, it also pays attention to the conditions that shape science and technology. Quite often, interests lie in historical antecedents of scientific and technological innovations. So, an antecedent is defined as a precursor to the unfolding or existence of something. Thus, historical antecedents in science and technology are factors that paved the way for the presence of our advanced and sophisticated scientific and technological innovations today. Knowledge of the history of science and technology is useful in appraising these innovations today. By understanding how previous generations influenced and were influenced by developments in science and technology, today's generation can come up with informed decisions on the proper application of science and technology to daily life. So historical antecedents, to sum it all up, is all about the historical developments or contributions of science and technology made from the past or era to the present. So these technological developments is the creation or innovation of such technology at a specific time to provide support or human activities. In the ancient period, it began in 3100 BC with the invention of writing, and it lasted for 35 centuries. So in this period, the rise of ancient civilizations paved the way for advances in science and technology. These advances during the ancient period allowed civilizations to flourish by finding better ways of communication, transportation, self-organization, and of living in general. In the ancient period, its inventions include ancient wheel. People from ancient civilization used animals for transportation long before the invention of the wheel. No one knows exactly who invented the wheel and when. The invention of the ancient wheel is often accredited to the Sumerians since no other ancient civilization used a similar device at the time. It could be that a potter thought of shifting the potter's wheel to a 90-degree angle for the purpose of transportation, or the wheel was reinvented for this purpose. Nonetheless, it would not be until 1000s to 1500 years later that the wheel was first used on carts. So the another invention in the ancient period is the paper or papyrus. Roughly around 3000 BC, the ancient Egyptians began writing on papyrus, a material like thick paper. Papyrus is made from the pith of the papyrus plant Cyperus papyrus. Papyrus was a plant that grew abundantly in Nile River in Egypt. Processed the plants to produce thin sheets on which one could write down things. Though they were not the first to develop a system of writing, they were able to make writing easier for the world. Since clay tablets were fragile, heavy, and delicate to handle and bring it to one place to another, it is one of the significant accomplishments of Egyptians' record keeping and communication. So another invention is the shaduf. It was an early tool invented and used by ancient Egyptians to irrigate land. Among Egyptians who lived near the Nile River, irrigation was necessary to water their crops. The shaduf, also spelled as shaduf, is a hand-operated device used for lifting water. So we are now going to proceed in the next period, which is the Middle Ages, and this happened from 500 AD to 1500 AD. The Middle Ages was not as stagnant as alternate terms such as the medieval period or Dark Ages suggest. In fact, many medieval universities at the time steered scientific thinking and built infrastructures for scientific communication to flourish. As such, some of the humanity's most important present-day technologies could be traced back to their historical antecedents in the Middle Ages. Massive invasions and migrations were combined during this time, since wars were prevalent, especially at the start of or early medieval times. Such technology needed in the field of weaponry, navigation, mass food and farm production, and health. There is a decrease in population after the war, but an increase in the latter part of the period. Some of the innovative minds came from this period and also known as the Age of Exploration. So the very first example of the invention in the Middle Ages is the heavy plow. Professor Thomas Bernebeck Alderson of the University of Southern Denmark succinctly describes the impact of the invention of the heavy plow. According to him, the heavy plow turned European agriculture and economy on its head. Suddenly, the fields with the heavy, fatty, and most clay soils became those that gave the greatest yields. The heavy plow steered an agricultural revolution in northern Europe, marked by higher and healthier agricultural yields and more efficient agricultural practices. Another invention in the Middle Ages is the gunpowder. Around 850 AD, Chinese alchemists accidentally invented black powder or gunpowder. Multiple accounts suggest that gunpowder might have been an unintended byproduct of attempts made by the Chinese to invent the elixir of life, which is why the Chinese called it Huayao, roughly translated as fire portion. Prior to the invention of the gunpowder, swords and spears were used in battles and wars. Since its invention, the gunpowder has allowed for more advanced warfare. Another important invention of the Middle Ages is the spinning wheel, a machine used for transforming fiber into thread or yarn and eventually woven into cloth on a loom. Although no consensus could be made regarding the origin of the spinning wheel, it is theorized that the Indians invented the spinning wheel between 6th and 11th century AD. Prior to the invention of the spinning wheel, weaving was done predominantly through the more time-consuming and tedious process of hand spinning. According to White in 1974, the invention of the spinning wheel sped up the rate at which fiber could be spun by a factor of 10 to 100 times. Thus, White argued that this invention ushered in a breakthrough in linen production when it was introduced in Europe in 13th century AD. So for the next period, which is the modern ages, massive industrialization started and the booming of the world population in the 19th century onwards. The demand for the production of more goods, efficient transportation to trade more products, and to cover more considerable distances faster, and the development of more natural means of communication. But food processing and medicine pose of the more significant challenges since health was a great concern. As the world population steadily increased, people of the modern ages realized the utmost importance of increasing the efficiency of transportation, communication, and production. Industrialization took place with greater risks in human health, food safety, and environment, which had to be addressed as scientific and technological progress unfolded at an unimaginable speed. So, the first example of the invention in the modern ages is the compound microscope. So, a Dutch spectacle maker named Zacharias Janssen is credited for the invention of the first compound microscope in 1590. Together with his father Hans, Zacharias began experimenting with lenses by putting together several lenses in a tube. This led to an amazing discovery that an object, when placed near the end of the tube, can be magnified far larger than what a simple magnifying lens can do. Jensen's compound microscope was an important progression from the single lens microscope. It was capable of magnifying objects 3 times their size when fully closed and up to 10 times when extended to the maximum. Today, the compound microscope is an important instrument in many scientific studies, such as in the areas of medicine, forensic studies, tissue analysis, atomic studies, and genetics. Another example is the telescope. Perhaps the single most important technological invention in the study of astronomy during the modern ages was the practical telescope invented by Galileo Galilei. This invention could magnify objects 20 times larger than the Dutch perspective glasses. It was Galileo Galilei who first used a telescope skyward and made important astronomical discoveries and identified the presence of craters and mountains on the moon. Galileo's remarkable technological contribution drastically changed the study of astronomy. For the first time, it became clear that the universe is far larger than previously imagined and the Earth far smaller compared to the entire universe. So the last example of the invention in the modern ages is the television. The Scottish engineer named John Logie Baird is largely credited for the invention of the modern television. Baird successfully televised objects in outline in 1924, recognizable human faces in 1925, and moving objects in 1926, and projected colored images in 1928. Baird's television technology caught on really swiftly. In fact, the British Broadcasting Corporation used this for its earliest television programming in 1929. Despite being the first television invented, Baird's television was later on criticized for its fuzzy and flickering images, primarily because it was mechanical compared to electric or electronic versions that were developed much later. The Philippines also contributes to the global advancement of science and technology. It is remarkable to note the ingenuity of the Filipinos since many of these inventions were built or made from indigenous materials. Throughout the Philippine history, Filipinos are responsible for developing many scientific and technological innovations focused on navigation, traditional shipbuilding, textiles, food processing, indigenous arts and techniques, and even cultural inventions. So the following are some of the most important inventions by our Filipino scientists. So another invention of our Filipino scientists is the erythromycin. Perhaps one of the most important medical inventions is the erythromycin. The Ilonggo scientist named Abelardo Aguilar invented this antibiotic out of a strain of bacterium called Streptomyces erythraeus, from which this drug derived its name. As with the case of several other local scientists, however, Aguilar was not credited for this discovery by Eli Lilly Co., which is Aguilar's U.S. employer, to whom he sent the strain for separation. The U.S. company eventually owned the merits for this discovery. So the most common and known invention of the Filipino scientists is the e-jeepney. The e-jeepney, also called as electronic jeepney, is the inventive response to criticisms to the traditional jeepney that belched smoke, directly causing air pollution, which made it unsustainable and uneconomical. It is designed to be environment friendly, eliminating noise and air pollution as they run on electricity. They are also more economical because electricity is far cheaper than ordinary diesel, allowing jeepney drivers to earn more profit. So for the next invention is the medical incubator. So world-renowned Filipino pediatrician and national scientist Fidel Mundo is credited for the invention of the incubator and jaundice relieving device. Belmondo's incubator was particularly outstanding as it addressed the state of Philippine rural communities that had no electricity to aid the regulation of body temperatures of newborn babies. For this purpose, Belmondo's invention was truly ingenious. In conclusion, upon learning the historical antecedents in the course of science and technology in society, people in ancient times were able to discover and invent things that would actually impact the lives of the modern people. The understanding of how social, cultural, and material elements influence the production of new practices, new ways of understanding, and new institutions is vital in our understanding of contemporary postmodern society. So that's it. This is already the end of my report. I hope you have enjoyed and you have learned something in this presentation. And thank you and keep safe always.